Welcome to week 6 of organizational behavior. This is the fall 2014 quarter. I'm your online instructor, Diana Block. And this is week 6, so this is the hump week of the quarter. And we're going to have our reading out of chapters 11 and 12 in the textbook. And as always, you see I have the PowerPoints attached here that go along with the 11 and 12 reading. So in chapter 11, you're actually going to learn about leadership, and you're going to look at some of the challenges of leadership and some of the facets of leadership, and effectiveness of leaders. Then in chapter 12, you're going to continue the discussion about leadership by looking at specific leadership roles and skills. So this whole week is all about leadership, and you're going to find some really good information in in the reading this week. Now, when you look at the discussion for this week, the discussion is asking you about Phil Jackson, who was a basketball coach, and basically asking you whether you feel that his leadership skills could be transferred to another industry. So it's established that he was a great coach. So, but the question is, would he be a great leader at a bank or a retail store or a chain of funeral homes? What are the skills that make a great leader, and are they necessarily transferable? So, of course, the easy answer that most people are probably going to say is, oh, yes, a great leader is a great leader anywhere. But that's not really good enough for our discussion. Tell me why. Why do you think someone who is a leader in a basketball game or of a basketball team would necessarily be a good leader in a bank business or of a counseling business or some other business where it's not competitive and where there's different types of people? So look at it from more than just the obvious angle so that we can have a really good discussion about leadership. And when you read through the chapters, you're going to find there's different types of leaders. So it's not that every person who is a leader is automatically a great leader anywhere. There's different types of leaders and that are successful in specific industries or types of businesses. So determine maybe what type of leader out of the types discussed do you think this person is, and what other businesses would that person necessarily be a good leader in, and maybe some they would not. um, you may decide that you don't think that a leader of a basketball team would necessarily be a good leader as a banker, and if that's the case, again, discuss why um, each type of business doesn't require the same type of leader. So when you do the reading, that's something you'll want to look for because that's going to be part of your discussion. If you're not familiar with who Phil Jackson is, you're not a sports fan, we've got some information about him and his accomplishments here in the additional learning resources. So you can certainly read about that to find out some of his history and accomplishments as a leader and use that to kind of jumpstart your discussion on whether or not any leader will fit into any business and whether leadership skills are transferable. So you also have your assignment this week. You've got an assignment that is on page 314. That's the assignment that goes along with chapter 11. And you're going to read about a company called CPI, and it'll provide you some information about that firm. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that in the textbook, those questions. So on page 314, is where the homework assignment starts. And so you'll read about this firm, CPI. And then there are some questions at the end of the article that you're going to discuss. And so it asks you in the first question how the leaders have adapted their approaches to the new strategic focus. So it tells you to see work unit leadership theory in this chapter. Work unit leadership theory is discussed on page 304. So make sure you review that and have read that before you attempt to answer that question. Because again, remember, as in every week, we're looking for specific references to course concepts and why those concepts and terminology apply to the answer you're given. So we're not looking like at a general answer. We're looking for specific information about work unit leadership theory in the chapter and how that applies to the question you're answering. And so then you notice on the next question, it asks again about the people in the article that you read, and it tells you to see path goal theory in the chapter. That's on page 303. So make sure you consider how the specific theory of path goal theory applies to your responses. The next question tells you to see leader member exchange theory. So make sure you're actually reviewing that theory and seeing how it specifically applies to the question that's being asked. Okay, back to the class. So the second part of the assignment that goes along with chapter 12 is on page 341, and it continues on to the next page. And they're asking about Levi Strauss and Company. So there is a nice article there on page 341, and you're going to read that and then answer the questions at the end. And so if we take a look there, here we go. Levi Strauss and Company. So you're going to read this article and then answer the questions at the end of the article. And so the first question here about Levi Strauss is asking you about Mr. Haas and describe some of the roles and skills of leaders described in the chapter and which ones Mr. Haas has actually filled. So we're looking for specific leadership roles that he has filled. And so the chapter actually discusses specific leadership roles. And so you'll want to identify which of those based on the article that you believe Mr. Haas has filled and other skills that he has applied as a leader. And then to jump start from there, question 2 says which of those roles did he perform well or not so well. So you item 1, you're going to identify specific roles and leaders that he filled, and then in question 2, identify which ones he was best at. Then the third question asks if he was a charismatic, considerate, or structured leader. So those types of leaders were discussed in chapter 11, and when we were talking about the discussion question about Phil Jackson, remember I said there's different types of leader. Every leader isn't every type. Every type doesn't fit every company or every organization. So the question 3 here is asking specifically, is this person, Mr. Haas, based on the article you read, is he the charismatic type leader, the considerate type leader, or structured leader? So you'll have to make sure you have read chapter 11 to be able to answer which one of those you believe applies to him. The leadership types, those 3 leadership types are discussed and explained on pages around 298 to 299. And then additional types of leaders are discussed between pages 300 to 303. There are specific types of leaders. And so this question is asking you to choose one of these 3 that you believe applies to him, and then determine whether you think that was the right style for that particular company. So those are the questions that you're going to have for your assignment this week. Again, remember, we're looking for you to tie the information from the chapter to the articles that you're reading for the assignment. And also in the discussion, make sure you're actually using information, concepts, leadership styles, and types from the chapter to give some meaning and depth through to the discussion. So that's what we've got for week 6. And there's also some great TED Talks videos that you can listen to for additional insight into leadership. We've also got the practice quiz so that you can start preparing for the next test, which will actually be in week 7 next week. And again, remember that if you're not familiar with Phil Jackson, or if you just want to brush up on some specifics to help with the discussion, there is a video article here about Phil Jackson that will help with your discussion. So if you have any questions, I'll be looking forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to talking with you in the discussion this week.